You're watching 7 River Sports here on KQEG. I'm your host, Terry Erickson. Each week, an inside look in sports, wellness, fitness, and introduce you to some people you're going to be inspired to learn about it, but especially today. This special show, we are going to review the officiating career of 2 iconic officials in the greater La Crosse area, in the state of Wisconsin, in the Midwest. With us today, Rod Ostrem and Elwood Harebo. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Terry.
It's been a pleasure to work with you over the years, and I've always wanted to have you on the show to talk about what you have meant to the world of officiating. And I know a lot of our viewers, too, feel the same way. Before we get into that, though, let's go down memory lane a little bit and talk about who is Rod Ostrem. Talk about when you were young and some of your experiences long before you got into the world of officiating.
Okay. When I was young, I grew up on a farm between Westby and Viroqua. And always loved sports, but of course I never got involved in sports till I was in 9th grade when I went to Viroqua High School. But I've always, I used to have a basket made out of a wire on a shed, and I'd shoot baskets forever. Or when I was in baseball season, I'd throw a rubber ball against the house and just pretend I was in a game, okay? Then when I got to Viroqua, I got interested in basketball and football and baseball. So I played 4 years there in each one of those sports.
Multi-sport athlete.
Right.
Was it common back in those days to be a multi-sport athlete?
Definitely. It's not like now, you know. None of us were preparing ourselves for college sports or anything beyond that. Mm-hmm. So, but I truly enjoyed my hero back in those days. I loved baseball more than anything, was Ted Williams. And that was my hero. And everybody asked me, why do you have Ted Williams as your hero? Well, I said I was a kid growing up and he was the man, see.
Of course, that was long before you even thought about entering the world of officiating. Elwood, lifelong North Sider, but prior to that, Bell's Coulee, or?
Well, before that, I was, in 1939, we moved up to Bangor, and I went to the Prairie School up in Bangor for the 2nd grade. And I have a story to tell about that because when I left Roosevelt, we hadn't even started the ABCs. So when I got up into Prairie School, they already started ABC. So I thought one day, this ain't for me. So I skipped school in the 2nd grade. So the first day, it was in October, I went and sat underneath the bridge on the creek up there. And that was fine. I watched the kids come home, and then I went home. The next day, I did the same thing. So Mrs. Amburn was my teacher, and she called my mother, and she said, "Has Elwood been sick?" And she says, "No." She said, "He hasn't been home. He hasn't been to school for 2 days." She said, "Well, I'll follow him and see where he goes." So she found me underneath the bridge, and she said, "What are you doing here?" I said, I can't go to school there because they know the ABC.
So the beginning of your rambunctious lifestyle, you're testing the waters?
Yep, I tested the waters. And the first thing I said to my mother, "Don't tell Dad because he'll kill me."
I suppose. And of course, then your children, as they grew up, they would never dare miss school, even though you did when you were like 6 years old or so.
So then we moved to Bell's Coulee. In 1940, we moved to Bell's Coulee. So I went to 3rd through 6th grade in Bell's Coulee. And then my brother Arthur, he joined the Navy, so we moved back to La Crosse. So I started 7th grade at Logan High School, and I knew nobody. I didn't know anybody when I went to Logan. Well, the first thing they wanted me to do was get in a band. So I went to band practice one day, and Mr. Amundsen was our band director, and he put a tuba on my shoulder, and he said, "We want you to play the tuba." I only weighed about 148 pounds. I says, "I can't carry this tuba." So he said, "Well, how about being a drummer?" I said, "Well, that I don't have to carry a big horn around." I said, "I can't even blow it." And he said, "Okay." And so I was a drummer, and then I was also in the orchestra and played drums in the orchestra. And there's another story to be told about the drumming. When I went in the service, I went to Fort Knox for basic training, and the first day of we fell out. The company commander said, "Does anybody play the drum?" And my brother had told me, "Don't volunteer." So I raised my hand about like that, and he said, "You're the drummer, go to the supply room and get the drum." So I played the drum for 16 weeks, and I was right in the middle of our company. I didn't have to pay any I didn't have to do KP, I didn't get anything else, and the men in my barracks were really mad about it. I said, "Well, if you played the drums, you wouldn't have had to do the stuff you have to do."
So, but in high school, though, you were sort of a Renaissance young man. You were an athlete and you were a musician, and you said you didn't know anybody, but knowing Elwood Harebo like I do, it didn't take you long to meet a lot of people and kind of develop your leadership skills.
Yes, that's right. So then, when I was a junior, I went out for football. And I had not played any sports because up in Bell's Coulee, the biggest thing you got was a sled to go down the hill. So I went out and with first game I played in, we went over to Houston, and they had just cut the grain field, and the stubbles were about like that. And so I played middle linebacker, and I intercepted a pass. It wasn't a matter of intercepting a pass, as how fast could I get to the end zone so I didn't get tackled.
Well, you were pretty fast, I imagine.
Oh, I was lightning fast then.
And I know you were a good athlete, and we're going to come back to that in high school. And Rod, I know you. Some of the kids that went to school with you, some of your peers, have mentioned to me that you were an accomplished athlete. Did you have a favorite coach and somebody that inspired you too when you were young?
Yeah, when I went to high school in Brokaw, I had two coaches that Howie Olson was my baseball coach, and Ike Isaacson was my basketball coach. And I guess they were my inspiration. So when I got to be ninth grader, from then on, I saw them every day. And Howie, I was almost like his son. I spent a lot of time at his house, and my parents weren't what you would call very rich, so Howie would take care of me a lot.
And then on to college.
And then I went to Whitewater, and I played basketball down there for 2 years. And what time I got to be a junior, they were getting a lot of kids out of Milwaukee, and I could see the handwriting on the wall. I said I had enjoyed it, but it was time to concentrate on getting my grades.
And then a successful career as a teacher.
Yeah, I started at Brokaw, and I taught there for about 15 years, and then I ended up at Longfellow. I spent 19 years there, so I had about 34 years of teaching education. Yeah.
And when you think of the career of Elwood, and if you want to go back to high school and reference that, fine. But then after high school, you just had an assortment of leadership positions.
Yes.
And part of working in the corporate world, you were a mentor, you were a coach, you were a teacher, you were in charge of many people and many products, and you had a tremendously successful career, didn't you?
Yeah, they selected me to go down to Plant 1 and run the print shop down there. And the day they called me into the meeting, there was all executives there, and they said, "How would you like to go to Plant 1? I said, "I would love to go down there, but I don't even know how the ink gets on a piece of paper." So we don't care about that because you know the organization. And she said, "There's a lot of turmoil down there, and we want you to go down there and straighten it out." So I go down there, and the first thing I did, I introduced myself, and I said, "We, not them, we have an assignment. I've been sent down here to pick up what's not been picked up for a long time, and if you do your work like I expect you, we'll do it together and we'll be very successful," what's happened.
So you didn't come, just like your attitude and your personality in officiating, you didn't come in thinking you were going to run everything and you were going to be the boss. You developed a team culture, didn't you?
That's exactly right, because it was in a disarray when I went down there, but expanded it so that it become one of the biggest implant printing in the nation for corporate.
And of course, you also, as we talked about being in leadership, you were then at TC, did some teaching there.
Yeah, I taught typing and business machines there for about 15 years, and then I went up to Whitehall and taught typing, and I went down to Boston and taught typing for the technical school.
And all that time you were thinking, I think I need to add something else to my agenda for the day and do some officiating, and Rod thinking the same thing. And when we come back after these messages, we're going to talk specifically about some experiences as two of the most iconic officials in the area, and you're going to be interested to hear their stories right after this.
At Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning, we have assembled a championship team
who listens to what your needs are.
We install carrier comfort systems that improve the comfort, efficiency, and the air quality of your home and workplace.
We serve you with highly trained technicians who are prompt, friendly, and honest.
For Gold Star treatment, turn to the experts, Carrier and Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning.
Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning, your comfort is our business.
Welcome back to Seven River Sports again. Today, our interview for the entire week on the show, Rod Ostrom and Elwood Harebo. Elwood Harebo, I remember this distinctly, decades ago. Call up a guy by the name of Terry, your neighbor, happens to be me. Can you come down and work a game? We're going to travel down to Bloomington, Wisconsin to work a game. And of course, I'd never been to Bloomington in my life. I thought it was a different time zone, but actually it wasn't more than an hour and a half away. But my very first high school varsity basketball game with Elwood Harebo, he throws the ball up, and I'm the other official near the sideline, and the ball goes out of bounds, out of bounds opposite of me, and I blew my whistle, my very first whistle in my high school officiating career, and everybody froze, and it was like 2 feet inbounds. That was my first call, and I'm thinking, Elwood has taken me to these sites unknown, and that's my first call. But it got better because you were my mentor.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we went down there quite a few times down in Bloomington and worked basketball, and we also worked football down there. And I remember you had just bought a van, and so our crew got in, and we went down there, and when we got there, it was raining. I mean, it was absolutely raining. And so we worked the game, and one of my officials, but I can't remember what his name was, he lost his shoe. And I said, it's too bad because you're never going to find it out there on the football field.
Well, the fields weren't that good in those days.
When it rained, it was mud. It was like going out in a pig pen and refereeing. So we went to get in your van, and it went, and here we are, an hour and a half from home, and he can't get his van started. But a nice farmer down there said, well, I'll come over and give you a jump. Well, we got in the van, and one of our guys was from the university, and he was hungry. He thought he wasn't going to get anything to eat. But we always had a good place to go down there and eat.
We did, and as we ended our career in Bloomington, they had a party for us too.
Yes, they did.
And kind of in honor of us traveling that long distance to work games. With Rod too, I have plenty of fond memories working with you. But one quick thing, I haven't shared this story for a long time. Rod and I worked back decades ago at Mount Scenario College, which is now folded. And it was in Ladysmith, Wisconsin. We worked a basketball game, the very first game that was ever played there. And then we worked the very last game that was ever played in Ladysmith, Wisconsin at Mount Scenario College. And they had a party for us at a place called the Theater Lounge, honoring us for our dedication over the years at Mount Scenario. Do you remember that?
I remember that very fondly. Yeah, that was super. The first thing I remember, though, is when we went up there the first time. Remember, we took the wrong road, and we must have went 50, 60 miles in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But they waited for us.
They waited. And a lot of people thought, Terry, you and Rod are going to Ladysmith, Wisconsin, coming back the same day? It's like, well, yeah, we did, but sometimes we got back and the sun was coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
It was fun, but Rod Ostrom, 60 years officiating, JV, lower level, and then varsity, college, state tournament multiple times. Fond memories, certainly. We could go on and on and on with some of those, but rewarded for your service and your dedication by being selected to the WBCA Hall of Fame, and I was there in 2014. You've had experiences that other officials will never have an opportunity.
Very true, probably, yeah.
Talk about some of those.
Well, I'll tell you what, I started out at the lower level, and it's a learning experience. But you know, one thing I was always fortunate, I had wonderful partners. And I started with Otto Pauls way back in those days, and then Lute Silvo, Wayne Gates, yourself, and let's see, Doug Connors and Mike Lindbergh. So I always said, when we were at the Hall of Fame, I always said, you're only as good as your partner. And I've always felt that. And towards the end of my career, when they went to three-man officials, you don't find too many people that are working basketball my age. And so it's hard to hook up with some other 70 and 80-year-olds.
What does it take to become a successful official? Well, one of them is conditioning, and both these gentlemen throughout their careers stayed in tip-top shape and still are, and that is not as common as you might think, and being as effective and being as respected as they were is because they were always on top of their game. Elwood, you didn't take a back seat to anybody in terms of your dedication over the years, decades of being an official, an evaluator. You ran a rules interpretation meeting. You were inducted into the Logan Hall of Fame, not only because of your involvement at Logan, but because of what you did in the corporate world and in officiating. You had football crews. You've just about done everything. Stories could go on until the weekend if we had time, but favorite stories for you?
Well, I always tell the first story I tell is when I started to be a football official. Dave Loomis, who now has passed away, called me one day and he said, "You ever think about working football?" I said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, "Come on down." He was working for Phil Schweike. He said, "We'll fix you all up, get you a uniform, everything." So we got our uniform, and Duke Coughlin, who has just recently passed away, was the assigner. He said, "You and Dave go up to Whitehall. There's a JV game up there. The referee will meet you. He's coming from Independence." So we get up there. We're sitting down there, and I'm nervous as, all get out. And I said to David, "I wonder who the official's going to be, the other official." Well, all of a sudden, this young man walked down the aisle outside there, and he stuck his head in. He had blonde hair clear down to here. And he said, "Are you guys the other official?" And he said, "Yeah, right." Well, I said, "Step in here a minute." I said, "Are you the referee?" "Oh, no." He said, "I'm not the referee." So I looked at David and I said, "I'm going to be the referee, and you're going to be the umpire, and he's going to be the head linesman." So he went and got his stuff on, and we were walking up to the field. I said, "Now, you got that red flag." In them days, the flag was red. Mm-hmm. I said, "If you pull that out of your pocket," I said, "you have to know what the penalty is." So he said, "Well, I understand that." So I said to David after we separated, I said, "If we get in trouble at this game, see that cornfield there? You cut through the cornfield, I'll go down and get in my car, and I'll pick you up over on the highway."
Great story. Baptism by fire. Weren't even expected to be in the lead position as the white hat, and all of a sudden, there you are. And then the career takes off from there. But not only that, you worked JV basketball, you worked varsity basketball, you worked ASA, you worked baseball, you umpired. Damian Miller played, you've worked softball, park and rec softball. Is there anything you haven't officiated?
No, there is not, except volleyball, because those people are weak. They have to be inside. They don't want to go out and gut it up out in the winter. And
you were a warrior, so you braved those bad days, Friday nights.
I got to tell you a story about Damon Miller about baseball. He was a catcher at Viterbo, and I got a call one day from the coach, and he said, "Come on over." He said, "We want you to umpire your baseball." I got behind the plate, and their coach had just come from, I think, Oshkosh. So I always prided myself in balls and strikes. And all of a sudden, the coach from the bench starts gibbering me about where was that pitch, where was that pitch. So I said to Damon, tell him where the pitch is. So he would tell him. And pretty soon it got to me fast. I stepped out and I called time and I stepped out and I said, I want to hear one more word out of you. That last pitch was 6 inches inside. Oh, he said, you got a ruler? And then I got back behind the plate and I counted to 10 and I went on with the game. I'll tell you what happened after the game. I didn't even pick up my check. He chased me clear down the street. He said, how come you didn't pick up your check? I said, you were the umpire. You take and keep the check.
So we've met a lot of coaches that also try to be umpires. With you, Rod, I've had so many fond memories working the state tournament with you, working college level with you. You and I were involved in college basketball for many years and worked a lot of big games in Division II and III and junior college. But one of the things that I've always enjoyed is meeting people from different walks of life, fans, coaches, of course, and ADs. ADs, when you think of athletic directors, you certainly have to think of a guy by the name of Dick Hackett. Many people like him. But the pleasure of being able to meet all those kinds of people is one of the benefits of being an official.
Definitely. I can't recall one AD that I ever, had a problem with. Some of the sites you go to, the dressing facilities are wonderful. Sometimes you got to wait till the players get done showering before you can get in the shower and everything. But I can't recall any AD. One of my favorite all-time ADs is Jim Moe from Hillsborough. And I worked my last game for him on January 29th. He just said, Rod, I'd like to have you come over here so I could honor you for your services, in basketball. So I worked with Gary Jagosinski. We had a game, and they took, maybe 5 minutes out. And Jim told the same story that you're telling about me. So that was a wonderful experience to have with an AD.
Well, yeah, of course. And you've worked with, as we close the show, you have developed friendships with a lot of administrators and ADs too.
That's right. Yeah. If you do the job when you're umpiring, refereeing, or whatever, the ADs recognize that. And there's one thing you got to remember. They give you a contract, you got to honor it, and you got to be there on time. And so they aren't pacing up and down and wondering where you're at.
And you have to be, certainly, you have to have the respect of people, and you both have tremendous amount of respect. Not a lot of young people want to get into officiating anymore. The next time we have you on the show, we're going to talk about some advice. We're going to talk about what it takes to become an official. We're going to plant some seeds and encourage young people to get into officiating, but the time that it takes and to be able to handle the pressures is something that I admire about both of you, because that's not an easy thing to do. And you represented with class officiating throughout your entire career. So it's been an honor to have you on the show. We appreciate you coming, and would like to see you continue official. Now, there's a shortage of officials, so maybe you both should come out of retirement and go back into it. But thanks for being on the show, guys.
Thank you, Terry, very much. Thank you.
Two great friends of mine, and it's been a great show. We're going to be back with some closing thoughts right after this.
At Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning, we have assembled a championship team
who listens to what your needs are.
We install carrier comfort systems that improve the comfort, efficiency, and the air quality of your home and workplace.
We serve you with highly trained technicians who are prompt, friendly, and honest.
For Gold Star treatment, turn to the experts, Carrier and Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning.
Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning. Your comfort is our business.
Welcome back to Seven Rivers Sports. Well, I hope you were inspired, learning of the contributions left by two iconic officials, Elwood Harebo and Rod Ostrem. We wish them the best in their retirement. Plenty of activities to take advantage of during the spring and summer months here in the Coulee region. Hiking, biking, water sports, kayaking, road races, music in the park. Take advantage of the great weather and all these outdoor activities. We are broadening our list of guests as we look to improve the show. If you have a topic or a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Check our local listings because on Sunday night we begin our coverage of Knights of Thunder Racing here on KQEG. Thanks for joining us. Until next week when our guests will be Eli Samansky, Connor Knerzer, and Andrew Sims. We take a look at Logan Baseball here on Seven Rivers Sports. Well, until then, hoping that you have an active and a healthy week ahead. I'm your host, Terry Erickson. Thanks for joining.